What are the priorities that a new Pope must attend to?
Well, I don't know. He's first of all got to get elected. I think he'll have to try and work it out for himself. I think he must feel that his first duty is towards the Church as a whole, the universal Church. He cannot be the Pope of a faction within the Church. He cannot simply be a Pope of Latin America, for instance, although the Latin Americans have a very clear idea of what sort of Pope they want.
You need someone who can inspire confidence and courage to the world. The Holy Father described himself as the Pope is the father of all, and you need someone to be the father of all. I mean, I refer to the great cleavage and polarization in society at present, the East and the West, capitalism and Marxism, the question of racial tension, white and black, the question of the poor nations and the richer nations, all of these difficulties. You need someone who will somehow help to bring this about. And Paul did, you know, in Populum Progressio, he made a tremendous effort there. But the world sometimes does not listen.
One, I think, is there's one of unity, and I'd say there's one of authority. And maybe they're not all that different, the two of them. The one of unity, I think, is that the new man would have to establish his team of people here in the Vatican, in the different offices here, as well as people in different lands, in the hierarchy, so that he would set the line he wants to follow, and he would have people who would do it not out of obedience because they're told it, but out of conviction. It's a forward-looking program, I would say. Peace development, going for human rights, talking to the real needs of today, not settling for sort of a fancy little question on the liturgy, which would appeal to only a very small percentage of people, but the real issues of today. I think the new man has to do that. He has to settle his own team. On authority, why I would mention that is, since the encyclical on human life, which was given 10 years ago, there's been a crisis of authority in the Church, certainly in some countries. People will say commonly in the United States, for example, that when Pope Paul issued Humani Vitae, that encyclical 10 years ago, people simply turned him off. I think that has to be restored, the voice of authority. But it's not this oppressive authority. It's an authority that comes after a broad consultation, consulting fellow bishops, consulting the laymen, as was called for in Vatican II, a broader consultation, and then enacting something.
So where do you get, are you talking about a sharing of authority? In other words, are we moving away from the Pope is king to the Pope is father of a set of bishops? Or does the new man, in order to assert authority, have to come back and be a bit more kingly?
Yes, I would hope he wouldn't be too kingly. I would hope it would be more of a share. One of the great things, I think, in the Second Vatican Council was the whole treatise on the Church, the ecclesiologies that came out of it. You didn't have one monolithic form. You had about 5 different types. One of these was the idea of the Church as the people of God. This came on very strongly, didn't it? Well, that calls then for a lot of consultation horizontally and not just a vertical imposition. I think that's involved. Another thing that came on very strongly in describing the nature of the Church in Vatican II was the idea of the Church as the sign of God's love, the sign of God's redemption, so that, very grossly, my idea is not to go around baptizing everybody in sight. It's to show them through my own life and my own behavior that God is involved with us and does care. I think those are awfully important, so that this would call for consultation also with his brother bishops. That question of collegiality is a difficult one, and we're still working at it. It comes to a head in the synods that we've had. That's one of the examples.
A papal election is full of contradictions. The cardinals, unlike other electors, are asked to choose a man not to represent themselves or even their presumed constituents, but to represent God. They must pay attention to currents in the Church and in the world, including currents of which they themselves don't approve. And in particular in these days, they must listen to the voice of other bishops. In theory, free to choose any man. In practice, in modern times, invariably a bishop, always a cardinal has been named. And as with any other group of men professionally involved in the heavy symbols of authority and decision-making, it's possible to identify distinct groupings and interests among the College of Cardinals.